Okay. Ready with that one?
Oh, thank you. I forgot.
Hey. It's 5:15. We'll call this regular meeting to order. I'd like to recognize everybody in the audience tonight. Would you please stand and recite the pledge with me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to move the flag back.
It's in the correct space. Moving on to board norms. Brenda, would you like to read those?
The board developed norms are: decisions will be based on the board's strategic plan, its mission, and what's best for students. The board will act as stewards of tax dollars. The board members will complete foundation work to be prepared for meetings. Meetings will be efficient. All perspectives will be voiced and heard. All board members will maintain a professional decorum.
Thank you, Brenda. We have no public communications, any conflicts of interest to declare. Hearing none, we'll move into consent agenda. A motion to approve. Motion by Jennifer, seconded by Brenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving into our regular agenda, we have nothing under recognition or correspondence. Moving to reports, the Student Council report. Bailey, would you like to come forward, please? Then state your name too, so people know. So.
Hi, I'm Bailey Hadlewick. I'm the president, or the executive president of the Student Council. First off, I'd like to say that I'm glad that I'm able to finally make this meeting. Been busy with a few extracurricular activities. So recently we had our annual fall blood drive. Every year the United Blood Service sends one of their representatives and they come in to talk to the council, and they set a hard but accomplishable goal for the blood drive, and we met the goal exactly this year with 51 units of blood donated, and actually 80% of those donors were new donors that had never donated before. And then even more recently, we've been working on fundraising for the convention in Bismarck, and we sold Firehouse pizzas for the second year in a row, and we covered the estimated costs of expense for convention, so that's all covered now. And we're just kind of preparing for convention right now. Everyone's excited for the annual trip to Bismarck for the state convention. One of our members, Samara McDermott, she's the publicity member on the executive board. She's running for the state board. And at the state convention, we learned some awesome new things that we bring back to our school. Some things are just little things like bringing waters to dances to try to increase participation, and other things, we actually brought a bigger idea back last year with bubble wrap. We laid down bubble wrap in the halls, and once the students were dismissed from a pep rally we had, they got to run around in the halls and pop that and just put some smiles on faces and relieve some stress towards the end of the year. So we've kind of had a busy year here, but because of our homeroom meetings, we've been able to keep things running smoothly. Any questions?
Any questions for Bailey? No? Okay.
I do.
Oh, sorry.
Bailey, can you talk about the homeroom meetings, how that shift and how that's changed for you guys and how that's helped?
Yep. So with the homeroom meetings, we're meeting every single day except for Wednesday when we don't have homeroom. It's just a lot easier, especially for me, trying to coordinate everything. I see all the members every single day. And we still have a once a month meeting where we sit down and are able to talk about everything for 50 minutes. But it's nice being able to just kind of coordinate things every single day for 15 minutes. So.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or none? Okay. Appreciate you coming. So thanks. Moving on to report number 2, fall activities. Jim, would you like to come forward?
Good evening. I apologize. I almost did not have a report for you tonight. I stepped out of my vehicle outside and wind took it right out of my hands. I almost had to turn around and go back home. But thankfully I was able to run it down, and so I do have a report here for you. Just going to kind of talk a little bit about the fall activities, and officially now they are in the books as of Saturday night with the conclusion of volleyball season here. But with the ending of fall brings the beginning of winter, and we've got several activities that have already been practicing for our winter sports and activities. Wrestling and boys and girls hockey have been added already here since the beginning of the month. And now today marks the start of boys and girls basketball season as well. So, and then following Thanksgiving break here on the following Monday, we'll have gymnastics, and then boys swimming and diving will get started as well. So then officially all winter sports will be in season. If you believe it or not, wrestling hosts our first home wrestling duel tomorrow night at Jerry Meyer Arena. And the boys hockey team is on the road to Grafton, and the girls hockey team is on the road to the co-op of Fargo North and Fargo South tomorrow for their first games of the year as well. So, you just flip the page, you take Sunday for what it's worth, and you turn to Monday, and away winter sports go. So that's kind of where we're at. Our Sophisticates, our dance team, they kind of kicked off their season, pardon the pun, but they had their first non-competitive event here this past weekend over at Fargo Davies to kind of practice their routines a little bit in front of a crowd and so on, and they'll be getting underway with their competition season here as well. One of the things I want to bring to your attention here right off the bat as well with our fall sports wrap-up is at the end of each season, the High School Activity Association has a Team Scholar Award that they present to teams that have a combined GPA of 3.2 or higher. And at current right now, we still have a few reports that we have to turn into high school activities because their seasons have ended here. But boys and girls cross country both qualified as team scholars. Our girls golf team qualified, as did our boys soccer team and boys tennis team. And we do expect that a few more of our teams are going to qualify as well. I do know that there will be probably one program that will not, but I know that program right now too, their combined GPA is over 3 point. So that alone too is, even though they didn't qualify for that team award, and I know the coach is very disappointed in that sport, but at the same time that tells you the importance of these activities and what they do for our children in schools, and giving them not only the opportunity to connect to the school and give them adults and support systems in place and give them something to do, but obviously the performance of their academic requirements also. They perform very well when they're involved in activities, so we want to continue to keep these young men and women involved in as much as we can. They're all important. I'm going to do a quick recap of each sport, fall sport, if you will, if you want to bear with me here. Our cross-country team overall this year, very young. From a wins-loss standpoint and where we finished in standings and so on, probably a lot of people would not view that as probably very successful, but I'd beg to differ a little bit based on what we have. Our boys did finish 16th at the state cross-country meet. Our top finisher came in 56th place. Our girls finished in 15th with our top finisher coming in 7th place. Numbers in that program particularly continue to remain pretty steady. Healthy numbers, I'll call it that. The improvement of our student athletes throughout the year, several of them, quite a few of them actually, having personal records at the most important meets of the year at the WDA meet as well as the state cross-country meet, I think says a lot for the development and what the coaches are doing with these young boys and girls and developing and trying to peak at the right time of year. So I think we got better things ahead yet for this program. I think things are developing, and as I said, the numbers continue to be consistent and fairly strong. Next year, the state cross-country meet was scheduled to be in Bismarck. Right now, we are making plans and possible anticipation of that state meet being moved here to Jamestown. And it sounds like that it's not a done deal yet, but it's a pretty good chance that if some things can't be taken care of in Bismarck, that we will probably be hosting that. And if that happens, we're going to be hosting 2 invites of our own throughout the regular season. We'll be the site for the WDA cross-country meet, the conference meet, as well as the state cross-country meet if that happens. So we would have 4 meets out at our Parkhurst recreation area out at Pipestem Reservoir, which is a wonderful course. It is a course that's exclusive to cross-country. Many of the communities that these kids run on golf courses and so on. We don't have to do that. Coach Ken Gardner and others that have worked with him have done just a fabulous job of establishing a trail system out there and taking what's been out there, moving it forward. We've done through some budgetary things and some fundraising things. We've added some fence out there, some permanent fencing to allow for easy transition of setting up for meets and for crowd control. Just it's a great environment, and we're very blessed, and kudos to Coach Gardner for setting that up. He's actually in the process of adding another 1,000-meter loop within that route here for next year to kind of take them out of the trees a little bit and more along the top of the hills by the lake. So you kind of have that view and add a little bit more diversity to the course rather than just a flat run. So we're looking forward to that. Our girls golf team, they finished 6th in the WDA, but then turned around at the state meet and finished 7th. So pretty good effort by those young ladies. We are going to graduate a lot of familiar faces off this past year's team, and probably about 3 or 4 steady eddies, if you want to call them that have been in our program for quite a while and have made up a majority of our team for several years. We do have a lot of young ladies coming up too that have taken a liking to what they're doing, and I think our numbers will continue to grow there a little bit too as the excitement picks up for this, and looking forward to that. So we are going to miss those girls that are leaving our program, but we are optimistic about the girls coming into the program and what the future might hold for them as well. Boys soccer team this year, they finished with an 8-9 win-loss record collectively. Unfortunately, they lost in their state qualifying match 2-1 to a Mandan team that they had previously beat throughout the year. A very competitive event, which was unfortunate because we did host the state soccer tournament here in Jamestown, and that would have been a great environment to have our home team there, and obviously would have added to the revenue of the gate. But all in all, the quality of play continues to improve in that program. Considering that we lost a lot of seniors off of last year's team, they did a great job of coming back and competing this year. We're going to miss a few off of this year's team too, and we're going to be fairly young going forward, but the numbers continue to maintain. In our program, we've become a 7 through 12 program in soccer where 7th and 8th graders have helped make up a portion of our junior varsity team, and I think that has helped maintain some numbers for us and has also helped us to increase the quality of play. I would look for that to continue. I still think better things are ahead for this program yet too, and facilities there with the addition of the press box and the bench areas. It's becoming a very outstanding facility, and one that nobody else can boast that they have that's on their high school campus and around the state that's exclusive to soccer rather than a combined football soccer stadium. We did have a sound system has gone in now too, which through our booster clubs and also through some help from Farmers Union Insurance has helped to pay the bill on that. So we have that installed now, and looking forward to just kind of finalizing some of the interior details of our press box, and then we can go on to the next project, hopefully with that facility as well, to continue to move that facility along. Boys tennis this year. We had a first-year head coach here in Ryan Iliff. Ryan did an outstanding job. We ended up 11-7 overall in duels this year. They were 3-3 in conference play, and they qualified for the state tournament the 3rd straight year. Numbers were down a little bit, but the quality was there, and he did a real nice job. We continue to improve in that program. The addition to our community, the track center, is only going to help that program. Give us, our students, the opportunity to play a little bit more year-round, get chances to continue to improve upon their skills. We've got a lot of young students that are involved in this program, and I think along with that excitement and the new facilities, the only way is up for that program. So I'm anticipating continued growth there. As I said, Ryan's done a real nice job. The advantage that we'll have there as well is Ryan kind of will probably more than likely be the kind of the lead person in tennis on the track facility as well. So knowing what those schedules are and what the needs are of the students would greatly benefit us. So looking forward to that program improving. Girls swimming and diving, they finished 7th in the WDA and 16th at the state meet this year. We had 15 qualifiers at the state meet. Overall, performance, again, very similar to our cross-country teams. As far as how they stacked up against the rest of the state, their times and such weren't outstanding. But if you take a look at their individual times and their personal records and so on, these girls continue to improve upon themselves and get better all the time. The program is extremely healthy right now as far as numbers. We have roughly about 40 girls, 7 through 12. I know our coaching staff, their goal for next year is to get to 50, and which I think is quite an undertaking to add 10 more girls already to that number of 40. But if anybody can do it, I think they can. So looking forward to continued growth in that area, and the future looks bright. I'll touch base on football. This year was our first year in the AA division of football. Greatly enjoyed that move. We were very competitive throughout the season, and I think the league as a whole was very competitive with one another. We ended up with a 6-4 overall record, a 6-3 conference record. We hosted a quarterfinal playoff game for the first time in a long time here. We're going to graduate a lot of the key pieces here off this year's squad, but as in past seasons, when you have the upperclassmen leave, there's always an underclassman waiting in the wings for their opportunity, and I think that holds true as well in this case. And I think next year we'll be looking forward to another outstanding and exciting season, and that will be the second year of the current football plan that we're in. And believe it or not, the timeline for the next football plan is already underway, and so that football plan for the 2019 and 20 seasons are kind of in process. The new guidelines for the next plan will be sent out to the member schools here in January of this year, with preliminary division assignments that we will receive in March. Okay, so we'll kind of know preliminary where Jamestown will fit in the next football plan, hopefully by March. And then a final plan will be sent to the member schools following here in September of 2018. So, and as it looks right now, I think there's, for the most part, a consensus amongst AA schools that this was a very good league. It was a very healthy league. I think there's some disagreement on whether or not we need to add more schools into the mix. I know there's some schools within the AA division that would like to see a couple more schools so that you can have an East division or a West division. Right now it's one division. You play everybody. Basically your all-state team is your all-conference team. There's no discrepancy between the two, and that's one of the things I think some of the schools would like to see and why they would like to see an East-West. That would also allow for some potential non-conference games as well to be opened up. I know Wapaton is always interested in playing Breckenridge. It's always been a big gate for them. This past season didn't allow for that, and next year doesn't either, but in the future they may have that opportunity again, and they would obviously like to have that back. But time will tell here as we go through and see how it shakes out. There is some talks too about potentially one of the teams in AA trying to opt up to a AAA division. And if that happens, in order for them to be able to do that, they would need a AAA team to agree to move down to AA. So we'll see how that all shakes out. And as I said, we'll have a preliminary here in March. Volleyball, the last of our fall sports. What can you say about this team? Regular WDA co-champs. They were 17-1 in conference play. They were West Region runner-up and state runner-up. I think they had a total of 7 losses. 3 of those losses were to eventual state champion Bismarck Century. They lost to a team at the Marshall, Minnesota tournament in pool play, Eastview, Minnesota, that I believe ended up in their section championship game and lost and did not qualify for the state tournament, but a very strong team over in Minnesota. And then I do believe we lost to a couple EDC schools over in a Fargo tournament. But all in all, just an outstanding year by those girls. You know, it's interesting. You look at this all these girls individually, and you would look at them and think, this isn't much of a team. their skills and so on. They're great young ladies, and they're good. They're good volleyball players, but you look individually, person for person, against a lot of the rosters that they were playing. As we said, we match them up against Century, and you see some of the height and some of the ability and how some of these girls hit. And you would think that there's no way these girls should be able to compete, but collectively, what a team. Outstanding group of young ladies that work so hard together. They played their hearts out every night, and they took nothing for granted, competed with the best. I mean, that championship match, and I've had a lot of people that I visited with since then. In fact, at the end of the match, Ben Lervick, who's the AD at Century, is a very good friend of mine, and we were visiting, and he says, Jim, I thought that our 5-set match at Bismarck Century High School, he said, I thought that was by far some of the best volleyball I've ever seen played in the state of North Dakota. And he said, I think tonight topped that. So to hear the appreciation that a lot of people have for our girls and for the quality of play really does mean a lot. They represented our school and their program, their families, always in a first-class manner. And a lot of people, I think, feel that this program is going to take a huge step backwards next year because we're losing so many seniors. I believe we're losing 6 off of this year's team. Let them think that. I know I've had conversations with Coach Hagerly, and she's very excited and optimistic about a lot of the young girls coming forward and ready to take on those challenges. So I think the future continues to be bright for this program, and for years to come. It's the numbers are healthy. There's a lot going on within the program and at the youth levels and so on, and so very, very strong program for us, and obviously they represented all of us to the best of their ability and did an outstanding job with that. So congratulations to them. So kind of in a nutshell, that's kind of been our fall. I think, from my perspective, looking at it across the board, I'd say a very successful fall. We had very, very few issues that we had to deal with as far as discipline or anything like that, dealing with any of our student athletes in the classrooms or outside of things. They competed hard, they played well, and I think they represented well, and they displayed the values, I think, that JPS holds true. And so I'm very, very happy with that. I have a few other things, but anybody care to, do you have any questions concerning any of the fall sports? Okay. Hall of Fame was a topic. This past fall during homecoming, we had our inaugural class of the Blue Jay Athletic Hall of Fame, and really a tremendous experience, and everything seemed to go well from my end. Our first class has been enshrined. Currently, their plaques are displayed in the JHS Hall of Champions up at the high school. So if you care to, you can walk down that hallway and see them. Many people to thank for helping getting this off the ground in the form of the original committee. I hate to name names because you always forget somebody, but I am going to name a few because they were very integral in this. Larry Ukestead, Tom Gould, Marnie Shirley, Joe Kraber, and Lyle Hansen were just a few of the people that helped bring this about. I've received correspondence as well as personal contact from several of the individuals that were inducted, just letting us know how special they felt during that period of time, and for Jamestown High School to go out of their way to recognize them, they felt that this was really a neat opportunity and a unique opportunity. But most of all, they really felt honored and how impressed they were with our student body. That's the one thing that I really kept hearing, was they are so impressed with our student body and how they acted and how they felt. Again, I keep using the word special, but how special they made it for those inductees to be included into their homecoming activities, and for them to be attentive and receptive and engaged during the process of as we inducted them and as we included them into the Hall of Fame in a ceremony. They couldn't believe that 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old students would sit still that long and be engaged that long and make them feel that welcome. So pretty neat and pretty special from that perspective. As far as going forward, nominations right now are underway for our next induction class. These nominations will be accepted through the school year, and May 1st is our deadline for nomination forms. Forms can be obtained off of our school website, or they can also be accessed from our activities department. And selection committee will meet again here in June to begin the 2018 class selections. So that's kind of our timeline for that. Does anybody have any questions on Hall of Fame? I can answer. Okay. As far as the number, set number, we don't have a set number right now. I would expect we would have another relatively large induction class again this next year. Eventually, I would see us trim that down to probably eventually get to the point where we're doing 3 to 5 people a year. Okay, but initially for these first few years, I would expect larger classes. So some of the nomination forms have already been rolling in, so it's always fun to see those and to see some names that, oh yeah, I remember that name. So it's good. So I encourage anybody that has somebody that they think is worthy to please complete a nomination form and get that into us. Budgets, I'm going to share that with you. Obviously a concern to all of us, and as well as activities. Activities is taking a hit like everybody else with budgets. Ways in which we've tried to deal with that have varied depending on the activity and what is maybe mandatory from a perspective of competing. For example, if you're part of the conference, the WDA conference, there's certain games or matches and so on that you have to complete in order to be eligible for postseason and so on. So sometimes you have to take that into consideration in what we're doing, whether it's conference versus a non-conference. We've used other opportunities. We've used revolving account fund dollars to keep some of our contests and or continue to provide proper equipment, whether it be protective equipment or just equipment to help operate the program. Some uniform purchases we put on hold in those programs that we feel that maybe we can get another year or two by with them. Some programs that have been put on hold have stepped up and said, rather than just put us on hold, we're willing to, use our fundraising dollars to help purchase these things. I'm working basically with the coaches to try to keep things looking as is, without having to change a whole lot on the surface. However, how things are being handled financially and budgetarily might be a little bit different. So there are some instances, like I said before, where things that we've provided budgetarily, working with the coaches, they've been, in some instances more than eager to provide some fundraising dollars. We've had booster groups come forward too, and other groups help us out with some of those things. And as I said before, maybe it's a freeze on equipment. Volleyballs, for example. Normally we order a set amount every year and we do that. Well, this year we decided, that was something we're fine with. We don't need to do that. So we eliminated that as a purchase in one sport, and other ways that we've done it as well in other activities. Some other examples, we've used fewer paid workers at events, utilizing volunteers more. Or taking a look at our operations people at an event and saying, okay, do we truly need these people in order for this event to go off? Okay. We'll see some more of that here in the winter months coming up too as well. Keeping closer tabs on our coaching staffs has been another way in some instances where normally maybe we've hired a third or an extra coach in some sports because of numbers, where it's been kind of iffy on kind of an athlete to coach ratio. There have been some instances where we've said, just for this year, we're not going to do that. We're going to hold off on it this year, and we'll take a look at it again next year. Some of those kind of things. Transportation is another way, whether it be a motor coach versus a non-charter type bus, or maybe it's rental vans, or maybe it's even carpooling. We've done some of that and utilized those kind of things. Again, everything from if people are already going to be going to the event, can we carpool it and save the district some dollars there? Or can we use fundraising dollars to help pay for some of this and so on? these are some of the ways that we've helped to keep some of the costs down in all the activities. And again, it's been across the board. There's not one program that hasn't done something to help with this. So, last bit I have for you here too, it revolves around facilities. We talked about track earlier, the new track facility. Currently, we've utilized that for a couple of our programs. We ran one boys soccer practice over there and a tennis practice over there, just to kind of as a guinea pig session, just to see how it would work and try to get some of the dynamics and those things figured out. And overall, it's gone well. And working with Amy Walters over there at track and myself, we've kind of identified a few things that we need to do a little bit better job of the next time we do those things, or communication things. And then we will be looking at utilizing that as well this winter a little bit with our boys and girls basketball programs, for potentially when we have some conflicts for gym space. For example, tomorrow night there's home wrestling going on, so we need a space for our basketball teams. The middle school has some things going on here, so we couldn't send them down here. So we'll utilize track center for a practice session. We realize too that we don't want to dominate their time over there, because that is a community facility. At the same time too, we do need to help ourselves out a little bit too from time to time with usage of that facility. We will be utilizing it as well for some of our sub-varsity basketball games, some of our sophomore games and junior varsity games. Not all of them, but there will be a few of those nights that we will utilize that. So I would anticipate spring sports, obviously too, with the weather always being in question, probably being a time where we will use it quite a bit with baseball, softball, and obviously tennis, as well as being takers in soccer as well. So with that, I guess that would conclude what I have that I wanted to bring forward to you tonight. If you guys have any other questions for me.
Heidi, you had a question for him?
Yep, I just have a couple. Actually, I have 3 questions. But
Okay.
first of all, thanks for the
Yep.
in-depth report on the athletics. I know, especially the football, I know there's a lot of people that had a lot of questions about our change this year.
Yep.
And thank you for explaining the process and what the process might look like going forward and how other teams are handling things. The agenda item was, for number 2, was fall activities report. So I have 3 questions. I think, can you share, some of the students did some tryouts, I know, for auditions for some honors programs. Can you talk about the success of those? Second, I think we had some student activities that did some service projects. You want to share a little bit about that? And then third, did we have any intramural programming this fall?
No.
Or what is
We did
our-
not. I'll answer that first. No, we did
Oh.
not have any intramural programming. I know Adam Gaylor, high school principal, is kind of looking into some of these things along those lines. So no is the answer for as far as intramurals right now. As far as activities, those are some individual things. As far as the honors, choir, orchestra, and some of those things, I still plan to come forward with you with some of these fall honors that are out there. So I was not, because some of our fall seasons just ended, some of those individual awards are not there yet, are not made public. So I did not come prepared to give any individual kudos, I guess, if you will, for individuals along those lines.
Okay,
So,
thanks. And
yeah.
do you mind me just to do another report some other time?
Yes,
on
yes,
the,
that's
because, yeah,
my
you
intent
may not
is-
have realized, but it's activities that's on the list,
Yep.
not just athletics.
Yep.
Rob?
As you were talking, Mr. Rolton, it made me think about tournaments, and you had mentioned that there's potential for the Class A cross-country. Sometimes when we talk about different tournaments and events, we think about certain events, and we don't think of the totality of events that happen across the state in interscholastic activities. And Jamestown actually hosts a number of state, regional level events. And I was just hoping you could talk a little bit about that, and I didn't tell you I was going to ask
Okay.
anything like this, so I apologize for putting you on the spot. But I think it's really good, and I think people should be aware. There's a great deal of positive impact to our community with events that take place from a state regional level. And like I said, sometimes we think about basketball or we think about football, and we forget about all of the other activities that see less press but are really, really important and impactful for a lot of kids. And you mentioned a few, and I can think of a couple. Cross country, maybe here next year. Soccer, state soccer. I know we've had Class B baseball, softball, Class A baseball, softball. I was just up at the high school today, and we host every year the State B one-act play. Yep. And can you talk a little bit about the tournaments, activities, the events that we host that bring a lot of people into Jamestown? The ones that, we don't get a ton of press for those, but they bring a lot of development, they bring a lot of people into our community, and they're the appropriate events to host in our community.
Right.
We don't have certain sites and venues to host certain events, but we get a lot of the ones that are appropriate for us to host, and hoping you could just share a little bit about that.
You bet. We have some great facilities in the community. There's no doubt about that. You mentioned a few of those. This will be my 14th year as the AD here at Jamestown, I believe, and this spring would have been the first spring that I would not have had a state tournament held here in Jamestown. But due to some things and some complications, we've gained another state tournament for this spring. So I'll be hosting another state tournament this spring. I was actually looking forward to an opportunity to attend state track meet for the very first time as an AD, because typically that's when the tournaments that we typically host in the spring would be. But I'll have to put that on my continued bucket list for another year, I guess. But we will be hosting the Class B baseball, softball again this next year due to another community deciding that they felt that it's in their best interest not to be hosting that event. So we picked up that. It had to do with some facility issues that they were having and working on. So some of those, obviously, boys and girls golf. We continue to host Class A, an East-West crossover every year, where we bring all the teams from the East and the West in Class A into the community for a 2-day tournament. We've held state golf. We've held, we talked about the soccer, the baseball, the softball. We also host a lot of our WDA conference things. We take our turn with region volleyball, swimming events, and so on. You asked about some of the things that kind of fly under the radar that people aren't aware. These North Dakota High School Activity Association contests and tournaments are great for economic development, but they're on a rotation basis usually. So, some of the best things that we can do for our community is to have annual events. Knights of Columbus Wrestling Tournament is one. That first weekend in December on a Saturday, we typically bring in, there's usually about 8 wrestling teams that come in here, and we hold a 1-day wrestling tournament. The night before on Friday is usually the middle school wrestling tournament that the Optimists help us support. So we do things like that. At the beginning of the fall, boys East-West soccer crossovers. We bring in all the Class A boys soccer teams into the community for 1 day, and they all compete in a couple games each. We host an annual 9th grade volleyball jamboree that this past year brought in 26 teams into our community on a Saturday. So these are some of the things that we're doing on an annual basis that people aren't probably seeing. And with it being, as I said before, a 9th grade jamboree or invite, you're not going to see press. You're not going to see, it's not going to be in the newspaper. It's just not one of those type of events that are going to sell sports pages or be out there too much in social media. But those are the things that we can consistently handle and do well. And we do those. Thank you. So, yep.
Okay.
Anything else?
Diane?
Yes, thank you again. And I had a question about track. You mentioned what you're doing over there now and maybe extending into the future.
Mm-hmm.
Can you remind me, I know there was substantial talk about the relationship between track and the high school and maybe the middle school as we go forward. What was the decision about how much track would be utilized, and was it a gentleman's agreement, or did we have something in writing? I just can't recall.
No, there is an agreement as far as to what the extent of our usage is. And basically, myself and Amy Walters, the director of track, get together in quarterly meetings. In fact, we just met today on a quarterly meeting, and we sit down and we kind of map out the usage going forward. We are very sensitive to the community and don't want to overuse that facility because it is a taxpayer's facility and so on, but it was in conjunction with Jamestown Public Schools as well, and there were some trade-offs for that, and we will have the opportunity to utilize. We will be able to utilize, but both of us in how we want to arrange things want to be very sensitive to our community and not close off the community usage to that facility, which we had in a previous facility that was located on college campus that ended up through the course of time just being for lack of better terms, they were lacking space with a lot of their athletics and activities that needed that, and it kind of overtook that facility, and we want to try to avoid that.
Any other questions for Jim, or? None? Okay,
Okay,
thanks for
thank you.
coming.
You
Thanks
bet.
for the report. Moving on to number 3, we have superintendent's report. Rob?
Okay, so I have a lot of what I've listed in my written report are also agenda topics, so I might just kind of skim over some things rather than state them twice. And if it's okay, I'll probably lead into the board education on the ESSA, because that is a part of that plan, but I'll address that last. In the policy update, just wanted to make note that we did have a error on the agenda. I think when we made the motion, it was actually correct, but is listed incorrectly. And so just wanted to make the note in the descriptor code, we did put the correct descriptor code in the minutes, but we did have an error there, just in case anybody noted that. With the technology audit, which is later coming as some board education also, just wanted to give you a little bit of background information on that. What we're really attempting to do is get that third party, somebody that's not connected into our school and know what we do, and somebody with outside expertise to be able to look at our systems, our infrastructure, our equipment, and give us that 10,000-foot view, that expertise from their perspective, and give us some suggestions. We wanted to build it around the same format of what we do our capital projects plan. So that 5-year plan, in terms of technology, that's about as far really as you're going to want to go out. But that same idea, you have year 1, these areas to work on, this amount of money, and continue that process through. And I know Mike will come and talk a little bit more about that. But Connecting Point was the one who did that for us. They did a nice job. They were here kind of giving an overall discussion point with the executive team. That was Mike, myself, Mr. Hardy, and Sally, and Joe, right? And so we started visitations there. They broke out and started visiting with staff. They went and reviewed all of our systems, our infrastructure, and they gave that report back based on that. So you have attached the executive summary and then our corresponding presentation that they shared with us. And then Mike will talk more about that in an upcoming agenda item. The only other thing I wanted to touch on in my report was district school improvement. When the Advanced Ed review team, those that had a chance to be here for that very brief review, that exit review, one of the areas that they talked about that they would suggest that we look to improve upon are some of our processes. And I agree with that, and I think that we've had a process that can be, although it hasn't necessarily been, but it can be disjointed. Where in this organizational chart that you see that's attached, everything centers on that DSIC committee, and everything flows there. And that doesn't mean that other teachers or stakeholders can't be involved, and that it's only this group that makes those decisions. If you look at that org chart, there's kind of bubbles that surround. Those could be ad hoc groups, and we're certainly not saying we don't want other stakeholders involved, but those that are on the team. But the idea being that everything needs to center on that team, because what's happening should be a school improvement initiative. And so we want to make sure that we aren't just kind of picking the shiniest penny or doing something that doesn't make sense or isn't congruent with what our mission is. And so if the thought is, if we operate with this kind of a procedure chart or process chart, that we will have a better connection between what we're doing and strategic visioning and planning. Okay, it's a very simple representation. Okay, question, Jennifer? Okay. And then if it's okay, I'll go up to the ESSA, the plan.
Go right
Okay.
ahead.
So what I had talked about before is wanting to kind of break down components because the ESSA plan itself, the plan is about 400 pages. So rather than just give you 400 pages and say this is what we're doing, I thought I'd break it down into little chunks and say, and really kind of prioritize what's the most important. You know, what are our most important rocks? What are the most important things we need to understand from a governance standpoint about ESSA? And the things that you need to recognize is our plan has 5 priority areas. 1, support great teachers and leaders. 2, engage in continuous improvement. 3, ensure equity. 4, promote local educational opportunities. And 5, invest in early childhood education. So those are the priority areas. And within this collection of 80 stakeholders, which I was one of, we broke down into different subcommittees. I was on the teacher leader effectiveness subcommittee. So what we're going to talk about today was not part of my subcommittee, but it's a really important piece. One of the, and rightfully so, one of the biggest criticisms of No Child Left Behind was one test, one day. You know, we put all of our accountability on one area, one test, and then we judged effectiveness based on one thing. And we know data analysis, that's not a particularly effective measure. And we also know as educators that student engagement is a critical piece of effective teaching. The problem had been, what's the measure? If you're going to hold people accountable to it, what's the measure to do it? And so as a committee, we struggled a little bit with that, about what would the measure be? Would it be a good measure? Would it be a reliable measure? And we came across through Advanced Ed, and Advanced Ed does have an engagement tool, and so that has been adopted as the aspect of the accountability plan that is non-academic. So ESSA's kind of been touted as that plan that you can do whatever you want. It's flexible. You know, the state gets to decide. That's not really true. I mean, there's still frameworks, and there's you have to meet certain criteria, and one of them was a non-academic indicator, and that's what our state selected was student engagement. I'm 100% on board. I think it makes sense, and I gave you some examples of what those different engagement surveys are. There's an elementary one, a middle level, and high school, and so they measure engagement as either you're engaged, you're compliant, or you're not engaged. And then across that continuum of cognitive engagement, behavioral engagement, and affective engagement. I've seen, we just recently received the Advanced Ed review, the full report, and I'll bring that to the board. We just received it very recently, today. I started looking at it today. And that was a big indicator, was the engagement surveys. They are extremely valuable to us. And I'm looking forward to kind of breaking down and disaggregating what those results are, because they'll certainly tell us. You know, just the cursory look at the engagement is going to tell you a lot. If students are just compliant, that's not facilitating learning in the same way that it needs to be. And I think that'll be very valuable to us. And I think that will be an area that we can continue to develop on, is how we're engaging our students. And not just to be compliant, sit in our desk and be quiet, but how are you engaged in the teaching and learning process? That it will be certainly something that we want to look at, engage with our staff with, and improve on, and how we do that. I think it's going to be extremely important. But overall, that is I wanted to touch on, there's a North Dakota Accountability Index. You get points. You get points for all of these different areas of this scale. And I think it's 681 points, something like that. I don't know how they get the 81 points, but 681 points, I think, is what the number is. And 20% of that is student engagement. So it's a significant portion, and I think it is a very good breakdown of what that piece should be. And I think it's, as I said, I believe it's an improvement upon the model that has been used for accountability. And I'm looking forward to seeing how that works out. But it is something that's important. We have a SM meeting tomorrow. And, we are still working out kinks, even though it's been turned into the Department of Ed and approved. It's still tweaks. There's still changes that need to be made as we go along. Things that we're working on still. The career readiness, the college career readiness components. Those are still, we still have to vote on those and how that's all going to shake out. But I'll bring those pieces to you in chunks, like I said, so we don't get so overwhelmed. But I think they're all important that you understand what they are. Two other things. Go ahead.
So I just wanted to do a quick clarification. Thank you for giving us these engagement surveys, just so we could kind of have a concept of what it is that you're talking about. So this is a non-academic measure of what we're doing. This is not the only measure that we're going to be utilizing. We will still utilize some academic, but all of it hasn't been decided yet. Is that how I'm understanding ESSA right now?
Thank you. I should have clarified better. This is only one piece. In the past, there was just the one indicator. How students performed in a proficiency test. That was it. Well, there was graduation rates and attendance, but the bulk of it. But now there are more indicators, and this is just one piece. There are still other indicators. Those are the indicators we'll bring in future meetings that I'll share with you, like there's still assessment, achievement tests. Those are still a component. It's just not the sole component of that.
I'm happy to see it be obviously more well-rounded. You never want to put the assessment of a district or a school on one point of the peg, but it is important to still take that peg into consideration as to if we're serving our students well. But I do appreciate this non-academic measure as well, to see how engaged our students are, to see if we can get them excited.
Academics is still the priority. It is just not the only measure.
Bob, you had a question?
Yeah. Just briefly, is this will this be done online? How is all this information going to be collated?
We do that internally here. It's a student survey, so we do it here.
Is it paper, pencil, or is it online?
No, I believe it's online.
Does that make it easier?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Two other items I forgot to mention in my board report, so I just want to touch on them quickly. If you are available tomorrow, 9 o'clock, high school, if you can make it, there will be an event there from 9 to about 9:30. And then I also had an interesting opportunity. Our stats and probability class at the high school, one of their projects is to make a presentation to the school board. I was to be a member of the school board, and I thought I'd invite you as school board members if you want to come. It's on the 30th at 12:35. If you want to be a part of that, you certainly can. And different projects that they're working on from, I think there's 4 different ones, AP classes, something about working on restructuring the parking lot. There's different things that they're doing for their math class that the assignment is intended to be a presentation to the school board. And so I thought, why not have you come? 12:35 on next Thursday. Okay, at the high school. Mr. Mouse in the math class. So.
Okay, any questions for Rob? None? Moving down the list, technology audit, Mike?
Good evening, Board. Like Rob said, we had the Connecting Point out of Bismarck come in and do our technology audit for us. They're a vendor we have in stock, but they're not one we do a lot of major business with. We do most of our Microsoft licensing with them, so they're aware of our district, what our needs are, but they're not tightly woven in there so they can have an unbiased view. I'm happy to report we received some very positive feedback from this audit. They were happy that we had 10 gig fiber between all racks in the building, every building across the district. They appreciated the fact that we were able to put 1 gig to the drops in the wall. They liked the fact that we were running the AC 802.11 AC wireless throughout the district, not just in select buildings. We did discuss the 40 gig and 100 gig availability of connectivity speed, but they felt we were in the right spot for a return on investment and cost effectiveness. But they did remind us to keep it in mind for next replacement cycle. Those were probably going to be more the norm. The 10% gig connectivity we have does put us in the top 20% of the state as far as connectivity in K-12 education. They came in, they loaded software, they snooped around. Like I say, they talked to administrators, they talked to my building facilitators, they talked to teachers, they talked to my staff. Came back, found some interesting stuff. They found 2,976 computers connected to our network. There may be more that weren't on the network when they were snooping. Quick rundown of that, there's 880 Windows 10 machines, 380 Windows 8 or 8.1 machines, and 827 Windows 7 machines. Okay. We are in the process, obviously, of updating to Windows 10. They did find 5 Windows XP machines on there, but I swear that's in Title I, and they have to have them for some of their older programs. They found 21 servers, 17 of which are running Windows Server 2016. Most of those are on our virtual host. We did upgrade all of that this year. So there's our approximately 5 other standalone servers that we need to get upgraded. 3 of those are running Windows 2008, which goes end of life next year. So they're in our rotation to get replaced. They were happy that we did have an established replacement cycle. Okay. Some of the recommendations they left us, again, were to finish our server upgrade to 2008, or from 2008 to 2016. Continue to verify that all updates are installed properly on the servers. Review our password protocol. They recommended that we should implement a more antivirus, anti-spyware software in the district. We don't currently do a lot of that. We use the Microsoft Defender and Microsoft Essentials. Clean up Active Directory. That's definitely on us. We weren't doing a very good job of getting all the graduated students out as our primary bulk. So we have some dead users in there that are no longer in the system that we need to clean up. They also did mention we have a few aging machines. While our 2976 gets us pretty close to a 1-to-1, there's a lot of older machines in there, especially some of the older laptops are causing some of our connectivity issues. They were happy that we did address them this summer by working with High Point, putting out additional access points. So they were happy with the work we'd done on that. They recommend we continue our standardization. We did put out 100 plus Epson projectors this year in the district, so we don't have any projectors in any classroom over 2 years old right now. They would like us to standardize a little more, continue. In the past, we've kind of done with who's giving us the best buy for machines. So we have some Lenovo laptops, some Asus laptops, some HP laptops, some Dell laptops. They're recommending we pick a vendor and go forward with that. I've worked with Sally. We're to the point where we're probably not going to bid anymore. We're just going to start buying out the state contract. It's more effective, and it will help with this standardization. Okay. Their biggest, their biggest, most important recommendation was we need to get an off-site backup. Currently, the important ones, I'm manually backing up to my own OneDrive account on a daily basis, like our SUI. I do that daily. Some of the other ones we back up. They're recommending we purchase a second Nimble unit, which is basically a box with a bunch of hard drives in it. We currently have one right now. It's 20 terabytes. We do all of our virtual servers on that, all of our cameras, all of that on there. So they're recommending, certainly wouldn't have to be as robust a one as we currently have. We could buy a little grade down one. They did make some budget recommendations as well. So Sally and Rob and I and administrators have looked at this, and we'll continue to explore that as we go on which closer way. So we're looking at purchasing that for the 18-19 school year, somewhere in there. And their other recommendation was we continue our upgrade path on cameras. We put 10 additional ones out at the high school this year. We're going to be repurposing the ones we pulled out to replace older cameras elsewhere. We're putting in additional cameras on the inside of the high school as well. We put some additional cameras in the CTC, so we'll kind of have the trickle-down effect on them. As long as they're still good working cameras, we'll probably continue to supplement our existing in the other buildings as well. So overall, I found it to be a favorable. There wasn't any surprises for me, so I was happy with that. I liked the recommendations. There wasn't anything I really wasn't aware of there. Most of it I already had a plan in place for, but it takes time and money. So.
As far as standardizing all the equipment, what's the timeline on that, or?
It would just be during our normal replacement cycle then.
Okay.
Like I say, instead of buying, who's giving me the best buy on desktops, like Byte Speed out of Fargo, off the state contract, then it'll probably be HP because they have the state contract. So
Okay.
we'll
So it'll be standardize one time then, or?
Right.
Okay. Okay. Bob, then Heidi?
Were there any recommendations, or do you have any concerns about electricity in different classrooms, or especially some of the older elementary schools? With more tech, you need more power.
A lot of this we talked to, and a lot of it we were hesitant to address pending what's going to happen with the referendum, because the referendum would take care of a good chunk of our concerns on that. So,
Heidi?
I just had, I know a little bit about it is in here, but just expand a little bit on, security-wise and those kinds of things that they might have looked at.
Security-wise, for the most part, they were happy with us. It helps to be hid behind the state firewalls. It really does. And the fact that we isolate ourselves from the state, we only pulling DHCP and DNS from the state. We do all of our own VLANs and network managing in-house, so there's not a lot of open holes for someone to get into. Password protocol they wanted us to look at, because we do have a lot of them are set to never expire, so we don't force them to change it until we force them to. It's something we need to review and update. Otherwise, like I say, for the most part, they're finding, because we're behind the state firewall, they weren't as concerned about the antivirus, anti-spyware, but they did recommend it. And of course, they also have that bundled with some cloning software that they we could.
Diane?
A related question would be, I think you said that they recommended additional cameras, especially at the high school. Did that surprise you at all, or did you?
No, in fact, we had in place before it even came in our budget. That's why we bought 15 additional cameras. We had 5 megapixel cameras. We now have 8 megapixel cameras out in the parking lot now. And then dealing with John and Officer Statska, we've determined where we're going to move those 5 megapixels from inside to give us better coverage, better pictures. There are some areas when we upgraded from analog to digital, there were some compromises we made that we thought we could cover a hallway going one way instead of both ways. We find we can't. So a lot of that, we're just going to be putting cameras probably back where we had them before.
Rob?
Just a comment, Mike as an expert has a lot of, understands terminology maybe a little bit different than those of us that are not experts in infrastructure, technology infrastructure. But really, I think that the biggest news for me was our infrastructure is very, very good. Where we need to continue to work on, as Mike talked about, is equipment. How is that equipment talking to and using the infrastructure that's available? So to me, the key takeaway is our infrastructure, our wireless, is top-notch. And we're going to continue to work on, from the equipment standpoint, of updating that equipment. I think that's a pretty good spot to be in. I think what the technology department has done a really good job in managing that network and making sure that our infrastructure is right. Now it's just connecting to that infrastructure. But I think if you would, talk with staff, students, they probably don't realize that the infrastructure is as solid as it is because of the connection. And I think for me, that takeaway was big, that there are no recommendations to upgrade network infrastructure or switches. They've done an extremely good job in managing that. That's really good news, because that's going to be a long-term, that's a long-term expense that we've already devoted quite a bit of resource to. And to me, then that just becomes the rotation of equipment. That's a lot better situation to be in than to be upgrading infrastructure. So that was my takeaway.
Jennifer?
I think it'll be important as, you and Rob and Sally are looking at the budget to keep that up with the infrastructure. Don't take away from the infrastructure to supplement the equipment piece. We're going to have to, because the infrastructure will have to continue to be upgraded and to be timely, but we need to get that equipment to be on the same pace. So that's something that we really strategically need to look at as a district.
Rob?
And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's also one of the important things about doing the 5-year plan, because they're also considering how that all funnels out and works in what those priorities need to be. Now, of course, they don't, that's an outside entity, so we have to take those recommendations and see what makes sense for us as a district. But it does give us good priorities in terms of how they viewed it as an outside agency too.
It was one of those left-handed comments to my staff. You guys have done such a good job keeping that old equipment running. That's the problem. You've kept that old equipment running. So it's kind of.
Steve, you have a question?
You said, excuse me, you said you really weren't surprised by anything. So maybe this is 2 questions, but do you think we got our money's worth from this? And then if it really wasn't a surprise, does this kind of give you a little backup, I guess, that these things you're bringing forward when you're asking for new technology, this isn't just your own opinion. This is, now we have a third-party opinion about this.
Yes, I think we got our money's worth on the audit. I've more than welcomed someone coming in, and it's always nice to think you're on the right road, but it's always nice to have it confirmed. As far as credence, no, I think the board and the district has trusted me to do what I should do. Do my due diligence, my research, and obviously it has to be my opinion as to what I think that we should do, but it is nice to know that I'm thinking the right way so far. So.
Okay. Any other questions for Mike? Bob?
I don't see anything, and maybe I just missed it in the tech plan about training for staff, because that's just kind of an ongoing need. What do you see in the future for that?
I do see it actually as an area of need. And when we had Rayanne here, she had a lot more time and did a heck of a lot of training for us, laid a pretty solid foundation that we've built on. Unfortunately, with Pam taking that position and keeping the webmaster position at the same time, training availability is definitely a concern for me. Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? None? Thanks for coming then, Mike. Thanks.
Okay.
Moving on, any old business? Hearing none, moving into new business. So we have nothing under activities or building or grounds or curriculum. Moving to finance, general fund balance, that's there for your information. Motion to approve the monthly financials. Motion by Brenda. Seconded by Steve. Any discussion? Hearing none, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to personnel, we have nothing. Policy and procedures. Yep, go ahead, Rob.
I structured these a little bit differently, again, just looking for efficiencies in how we make motions. If you'll notice, in 6A, 6A1 and 2, the first item is rescinding a policy that already exists and then replacing it with policy ABBA and then a board regulation. So the idea behind it, if I just to provide some clarity, how the structure is that you would be making one motion to rescind one policy, provide a first reading for the next policy, and then board regulations, administrative regulations, exhibits, trying to do it all in one lump. Again, it's just trying to be more efficient in what we do, but that was the thought process.
Yep. So going into the policy and procedures, we'll have the motion. It'll be like, well, we can start here. The motion to rescind policy GA, the comprehensive tobacco-free, and then within that motion, it's going to be subsequent 1, the first reading of the North Dakota Comprehensive Model School Policy for Tobacco, and then 2, the first reading of the Tobacco School Policy Workplace Violation for the public. So, there a motion for that? Motion by Bob, seconded by Diane. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in, Heidi?
I was actually trying to open it up here quick and find it, but I can't remember which one it is. But there was one where it indicated resources, including Breathe and D. Is that, with the change in funding does it still exist? I just want to make sure, because it got moved under the Department of Health, but it's still called that, and still, just because we had a certain thing named, I wanted to make sure that it was still relevant after the legislative session. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
If I can make a comment on these, it is following the School Boards Association policy, of course, but I also sent it over to Central Valley Health to get perspective on the policy also, and they did provide that for us, and so just want to make sure you're aware of that.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving to letter B, is there a motion to rescind the evaluations of teaching staff policy DFAA and have the first reading of the teacher's evaluation policy DFFA and the number 2 teacher's evaluation procedure DFFA-R? Motion by Jennifer. Seconded by Heidi. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving to letter C, is there a motion for the first reading of the teacher supervision policy DFAB? Motion by Jennifer. Seconded by Steve. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving to letter D, is there a motion for the first reading of the amendment review of contested material in personnel policies, files, policy DIB? Motion by Brenda. Seconded by Bob. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving to letter E, is there a motion for the first reading of the professional development plan policy DGGA? Motion by Jennifer. Seconded by Brenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving to letter F, is there a motion to rescind the policies or procedures for challenged materials, policy GAAC, and subsequent first readings 1, 2, and the review of the Jamestown policy reconsiderations of instructional resources, and the first reading of the Library Bill of Rights? Motion by Bob. Seconded by Jennifer. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving to letter G, is there a motion for the first reading of selection and adoption of instructional materials, policy GAAD? Motion by Brenda. Seconded by Steve. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving to letter H, is there a motion for the first reading of student achievement policy GABDA? Motion by Jennifer. Seconded by Brenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 7, we have nothing under tuition. Moving on to items for future agenda. Is there anything that board wants to hear? Or? Heidi?
And maybe this is in the works, but at some point it would be nice to do a tour of the new makerspace at the high school and
that's
plan.
right.
And there might be something in the works for that already,
Yep.
but.
Rob?
I'm glad you brought that up. We'd actually talked with Mr. Gaylor about hosting a school board meeting there, and then doing some, having some students share with us a little bit about what that space is. And, this is a space that is designed by and really managed by the students. They are the help desk, so to speak. If a teacher wants to use that space or needs some help, say using a laser engraver, or if a student wants to come in and do some programming with one of the drones, they work through the students. It's a very nice space. I was just in there again today. The event that we'll have tomorrow, if you do come, that will be the space where we meet prior to going in, and so you have a chance to spend a little bit of time in there also. But we do plan to have a meeting there and then have students and invite the businesses that gave. If you remember, half the money that was raised, part was a grant, the other half was a match by local businesses for that space. So I wanted to invite those those businesses in also to see kind of what's happened in that space. And it's like I said, I was in there just today. It's a very impressive space, a very engaging space. Look forward to having you there.
Okay.
High school media center.
Yeah.
Was a computer lab that nobody really went into, and now it's a space where people can use it more.
Is that going to be before the end of the year, Rob, or probably?
I'd like to
after?
do that sometime. Mr. Gaylor really wanted the space to be a little more put together.
Okay.
It's kind of gone in stages. What stuff comes in, students unpack, and they get that. And I'm sure there's a lot of adult help there too. But I know a lot of the bulk of the work has been students.
Okay.
They're really a very, very cool space.
Okay. Moving on to meetings to be scheduled, we have the district school improvement meeting coming up on Thursday, December 7th at 3:30 in the Thompson Room in the middle school. We have the health insurance meeting on Monday, December 11th at 3:30 in the district office conference room. We have the district technology meeting on Thursday, December 14th at 4 p.m. And then we have our regular school board meeting on Monday, December 18th at 5:15 here in the middle school, Thompson Community Room. And then also to remind everybody to right-click and do our monthly superintendent evaluation. It is Section 4 and Section 5. And then also to right-click on your adjournment to assess the meeting. No further business, meeting's adjourned.
Who could make that 30th? That's the stats class?
4 o'clock. Doesn't say where, so someplace.
It's a Thursday at 12:30. Yeah, that's fine. Okay.